Hey guys, thanks for coming out for another great episode here of not just Studio Comics who are going to be presenting today, but Heroes Manufactured, which that brings me right to it. Studio Comics is our guest for today. Not just Studio Comics, but the creator of Studio Comics himself, Alfonso Espinos. This is going to be a great episode, kind of a mini reunion of one of our main guys, main characters, main personalities from the original Heroes Manufactured film. So we're going to get right into it today with Mr. Alfonso Espinos. Here he is. Hey there, Alfonso. How's it going, buddy?
Very good, Mr. Jerome. You caught me trying to look for the page. I'm trying to find some videos here about interesting comics, and then I find myself.
Yeah,
well, with yourself.
We're here with Mr. Alfonso Espinos himself from the original Heroes Manufactured film at StudioComix Central, right? Like that's the where you are right now. You're in the main office, the main shop, the press house, everything, the printing shop, everything, right?
I am indeed. I'm sitting down here at my desk right now, finishing some cleaning and stuff. Absolutely, yes. We are sitting down on the main heart of the let's call it the Kitchener comic book scene for now.
Oh, it's awesome. Well, listen, I mean, Alfonso, you've been a great individual to be a part of this entire Heroes Manufactured thing from day one. I mean, you're literally, I call it, you're our poster boy, and I mean, here's the reason why, guys. Alfonso's that one guy right there in the middle on our original Heroes Manufactured poster. If you watch the film, I don't want to ruin it for you guys, for anyone who hasn't watched the film, which originally came out in 2016, so you should have seen it by now. But Alfonso was one of the main individuals that we've actually really interviewed, went into an in-depth story, and you know he was doing this at a time where you know you were running your business. This was before the shop had opened up, and before I mean the business was already running pretty full fetch. And it was interesting to see what you were doing at the time, because you were going out there yourself with all of your might and doing a lot of the things that you were doing yourself. I mean, you have a huge team, and the one thing is that I wish we would have explored this more, and maybe we'll have to do this in a sequel, because I've been talking to you for years about doing the sequel for the movie, showing where you guys are at, what you guys are doing. But this will give people a little bit of insight into what you're doing now. But yeah, I mean, it's just incredible what you've been doing. And I want you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself since the movie, and tell us a bit about like your recent work with Studio Comics today. How about we start with that?
I love it, Jaron. And then before anything, I want to point that out that yes, indeed, that was, if I'm not mistaken, we're looking at about like maybe 4 years ago when we start talking about the whole movie production. You were filming a documentary at a time. It was one of the shows, Hamilton Comic Con or something like that, we actually like met. And we started like chatting from there. We kind of like did a follow-up, and then suddenly it seems like my story appealed to you to be kind of interesting of what I was doing back at the time.
Yeah.
And then that's the reason why I just jumped on board of the whole Heroes Manufacture movie. At a time, we're looking at what, 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, 4 years ago. I mean, you were like, and that's the thing. Like when I met you originally, you already had like, I remember seeing all these other booths that in the Artist Alley in Hamilton Comic Con. It was Hamilton Comic Con 2015 or 2016, but everyone had these like 1 or 2 books they were trying to put out. You had like 8 books. you were like distributing, and I remember, because I came from a film background, and I think I even remember speaking to you about this at the time. But in the film world, to have that much property already and going out there and just pushing it is impressive. Because in the film world, it's the same thing, right? Like you're pushing films, movies, content, properties, and you already had established like an array of content that was under your label, and then you were doing more on top of it, which is amazing. I mean, you rarely see that out there. It's hard, but good for you, man. Like, it's amazing what you've been doing so far.
Oh well, thank you very much, Aaron. And I will say that but even back in the day, like we're looking at what 4 or 5 years ago, when actually when Studio Comics, when I start putting back together here in Canada, when I moved like about 12 years now ago, when I moved here from Mexico, then I start finding out that and like as I was an established creator on Mexico. So then I've been doing comics for quite a while. I mean, like the series of the Nike Spike, there were a certain number of books that I already printed. So then when I finally came back here to Canada to leave, to move, to make a life here in Canada, then I noticed that some of these comic books, they were unknown for pretty much all the popular, like all the readers around here, right? Especially because the comic book that I created at Night Spike, it was distributed in the local Mexican market, and of course, with that being said, it creates a little bit of unknown right here for the new market. So then when I moved here, I decided to start redo the series of the Nike Spike, but at the same time, also introduce different type of styles. I mean, my style is the cartoony style, right? It
Yeah,
was
but one that's
pre-cartoony,
loved by
like
everyone, right? Like we all really love that style. And I mean that brings me into
yeah,
like I also want to kind of show people here about Night Spike a little bit because you just mentioned that.
yeah.
And these are
Oh, there you
some of
go.
the
There they
books.
are.
Yeah, these are just some of the books that you started with originally, but I mean,
Yeah.
how many issues have
So
you
then,
had so
if you
far in total?
and the Nike Spike, we're looking at about like 12, 13, about like 13, 14 issues that I previously edited in Spanish. Then
Wow.
here on Canada, then in English, that's the new generation of the Nike Spike, that new wave of Nike Spikes. Then I got pretty lucky that the story was well received by the readers. At the same time, the character and the stories, the comic books, well, that was also well received by the readership. So then the one covers, the ones that you're seeing on screen, by the way, you have Nike Spike number one right in the middle. That cover was a variant cover that I did actually for a show called Hero Fest Canada. If I'm not mistaken, I think that was 2016. That
Yeah.
was one of the pretty much 12 variant covers that I have on number one. There's a bunch of them that I have been doing. And most of these variant covers that I've been doing, they were pretty much work with a show, a local show that we offer these variant covers of number one only when the show was happening. And this same type of deal I came across and I managed to put together with the guys at Comic Con, the Comic Con Mexico in 2011, when it was the first and only show that has been done Comic Con Mexico in Mexico City.
Oh, that's
And
amazing.
the other cover that you see, what is it?
No, I'm saying that's amazing. That's amazing. Like that you were able to do these shows in Mexico and Canada, everywhere. It's
Oh
it's
yeah.
absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, and that's importance that I see when I was mentioning about the cartoony style. So then, as you can tell, like the comic books is looks like a cartoony style, like a comic book. So at that point, I get the opportunity to meet another group of creators from Mexico that they were looking to put together the comic book. One of them, their name Carlos Bernal, amazing artist, great buddy. We work together in a couple projects. There was a comic book that we were working that we put together. It's called Algiak City. Beautiful book. We finally reached the first grapple, the first trade paperback. The same thing with the second. We call it. I call it the first generation of Studio Comics guys, right? The Studio Comics team. Then right after that comes George Robles, and he was working with 2010. So the three of us pretty
And
much we
that's
start putting
this
those
one
books
right here,
together.
right? 2010.
Exactly. Yes, yes, yes. And believe it or not, that cover that you have right there, it's the volume one. That's the cover of volume one, where also Alejandro Games, Jorge Robles, and myself worked together to put together pretty much the first compiled book of the first 5 issues of 2010 that actually was launched 10 years ago. That was
Wow.
2010 when we actually launched it for the first time. The number three that you have right there on screen, believe it or not, that was a first variant cover that we put together for a show under the Studio Comics label. That was the variant cover of number three of 2010, and this was I mean when George sent me the illustration about this cover, I said like, dude, we have to make it a cover. And I think that we did such a small little run of those ones, something like maybe 50, 100 copies,
Wow.
and I don't even have one copy myself, and now you find it on eBay like for like 20, 30 bucks, right? So it's incredible like how people they like to collect these type of things, and I love to produce them too, right?
Yeah. So Alfonso, like if we look at this, these are some other books you got here: The Victory, and Producer. So tell us a
Producer
little bit
K.
about some of these books as well. I mean, were they produced also with the Mexican team originally, or was this part of the Canadian team?
So then this is what happened. So then after the first wave, so then the first wave of comic books that we launched was, of course, 2010, creation and drawn by George myself. We have Object City with Carlos and myself, some parts, and then we have a third book that one is completely sold out. I don't think that I even have copies again myself. That other book was from a Spanish writer with a combination of different artists working on the title. It was called The Six Faces of a Dice. That one was a miniseries with six titles. This is a really obscure comic that we have under the StudioComix. That one right there was completed six issues, and then that was kind of like the first wave of the comic book of the StudioComix Press wave, right? So we have Object City 2010, um, Six Face of a Dice, and the Nike Spike. Right after that, I learned that, for example, Nike Spike was super cartoony. Um, Object City was really superheroes. 2010 was more like a science fiction type of style, and you have your Six Face of a Dice that was a lot of call it like adult reading stories, right? So we were missing a few other areas that I really want to cover, right? Example, like for the teenager type of adventure story that it mixes a little bit of more like that relationship between teenagers and stuff. So then it came to the chance to start producing The Victory. So then that's when The Victory comes around, right? So it's a really good story, combines a little bit of a manga style with an American style. We call it the Ameri manga style because it's an American style in the manga place. Beautiful, done by Rampante. He did really good work on the art. Right after that, we noticed also the kids were getting a lot of monsters with the zombie thing. We tried to put together another book that is kind of like monsters for that young-ish generation. So then what we did, we put Producer K. That the translation in Spanish, well, in English, it will be like Lost Circus or Circus
That's this
Lost.
one right here, right?
Um,
The one I showed just a few minutes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that comes in the second generation as well of the comic books, and that one comes along with Victory, Producer K, and Dark Blood, and it was at the end of that second generation when there's a third comic book, fourth comic book that from a local Canadian comic book creator that I was fascinated with the story, and I think that I couldn't pass that opportunity to say no to edit and publish that book that was Vinny and Bob. That is a local comic book
Yeah.
creator. He is there. You go. There you go. The Vince Thompson from Vinny and
Yeah.
Bob Comics.
Vince Thompson, right? Vinny.
Yeah, Vince Thompson. Yeah, yeah. And the impressive thing about Vinny is that I get a chance to meet him at I think it was a fan expo or Toronto Comic Con way before we published his book. And when he approached it, when he actually showed up at my booth, says like, I'm looking for an editor. I'm trying to put together this book. What do you think? I look at the work. The book was printed and finished. And I said, buddy, this looks fantastic. I mean, I think that maybe we can do something. However, let's wait and see. So then after the term of a year, I was like just checking what he was doing. He was really active on social media. He was creating more pages, doing it all the time, moving. And at
Yeah,
some
he's
point, said
great.
like, dude, you have to.
And he was
You have to do it.
also in the original movie. I mean, we had a nice interview with him in the beginning, just as we were talking about StudioComix, and he's been part of that team for quite some time. I mean, it's just amazing to see what you've done. Now, Alfonso, I'm going to start taking us just a little bit into some other questions here, a little bit about
Okay.
what you've been doing. This is the StudioComix Press family. There's an image there of Alfonso and Stephanie Line. Stephanie's been part of your team for quite some
Japanese.
time, Alfonso. And you know,
Absolutely.
yeah, she's out at the cons a lot of times. She's taking the booths. She's dealing with the booths a lot of times when you can't make it and you're busy at the shop, or you're getting, you know, you're pressed for a deadline. I know that she's helped a lot. I've seen her at shows, and you know, we always connect whenever we're at shows. To you and I. But then here's an image. This is part of the Heroes. This is actually from the Cambridge Comic Festival. This was when we originally shot the movie. From what I remember, I see a lot of the same costumes. Is that correct?
It is correct, buddy. So then those are that was beautiful year, fifth year that we put together that Cambridge Comics Arts Festival. The response to have an opening or a place for comic book creators, new emerging comic book creators to have a space to not only like show their work, but also like make sure that they can market their work, that they can make a little bit of money if they want the art, right? So Cambridge Comics Festival, we've been really supportive from the libraries to put together that show, the idea exchange libraries for what I've
Yeah, I
been
mean,
working for quite a while as well.
I met Claudio. Is it Gerardo? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I met
Claudio.
Claudio there. He's one of our founding members on the Heroes Manufactured group on Facebook, and he's been a great
Awesome.
participant. He's a great guy. Love that guy, and he does some incredible work. I love his art too. And then yeah, this kind of brings me into the next little bit. This is your new shop. So I mean, you've only had this for a few years now, and it's I mean, we're only really seeing a glimpse of it with this image, because you still have the printing press in the back, and you've got these massive like Xerox printing machines, and I mean, you're kind of like a jack of all trades. You've been running everything here, from selling independent comics. You also sell some commercial comics. I've been there. I bought some stuff from you myself. I mean, great stuff. I
Hey,
bought, guys,
gotta say
I bought an issue of Amazing Spider-Man 300 from this guy. He's got some really cool rare items. So I highly recommend you go out there, check it out, because it's amazing. And if you guys want to, I just put your banner on below. That's your website and Twitter information for people that want to get to know more about StudioComix Press, what you guys are doing. But yeah, I mean, tell us a little bit about the shop.
You know what? You're on the shop. Was a project that I had like for many years. This was my problem that I always face, right? Like when you go to a printer or when you go to a print shop, a commercial print shop, or for that regard, any kind of print shop, you as a comic book creator, we are positioned, and that's something that I cannot understand. We comic book creators and comic book people that they print comic books, we are based not on the magazine part, but we're not also into the entertainment part. We're kind of in the middle, right? Because comic books, they
Yeah.
have different medias, they have different ways that every single comic book creator has an idea of how it's going to be or how it's going to look, their comic book at the end, right? And that it brings us back also into like the whole idea of creating comic books and how to make it different.
Yeah, I mean,
If
there's
we
there's
look
the
at
layout, there's the inking, there's everything, and there's a whole process to how you want things to be cut and created and colored, right? Like it's
and and
yeah,
and that's what it makes it so interesting though, because then every single creator, when they're sitting down drawing their comic book and they're putting it together, they are pretty much picturing how it's going to look at the end. That's at least when I sitting down in my desk and I'm creating my comic book, I know exactly how and why the comic book is done that way and how it's supposed to look like at the end when it's printed. We have an example, right? Like back in the 80s, there was a comic book that was way different than many other comic books when they start to combine different print medias to create different type of comic books to make it more appealing for the reader, right? In the 80s, you know that we have a lot of that boom with the platinum covers that they are, shiny. They have embossed covers, so they have different type of things that again the creators were trying to look for a different way
yeah,
to create a different way to approach a comic book. One of those ones that always jumps into my mind is one comic book called The Ferret. If you haven't seen that comic book, have you seen it? It's beautiful.
Well, it sounds vaguely familiar. I think you may have showed this to me once before, or at least we've interviewed you about this in the past. But it sounds
Yeah.
extremely familiar, so I'll say that.
So this is the thing. So then comic books like that you have an actual comic book with a die cut of the character in one of the corners, that makes it so appealing. I mean, like, who doesn't want to see that type of comic book? This is a different way to approach your comic book. At the end of the day, it's a way that the creator picture how the comic book's supposed to look like at the end. So when I start approaching my local print shops and I start asking them how I can accomplish certain goals, there was three answers. Answer number one is like, no, we can't do it. Plain and simple. They don't want to take the jump to do this type of crazy projects that you want to produce and put into the market. Number two, price points are insane.
Yeah, they
Right?
really,
You go to
really
them,
are. They really are.
so then you go over there and say like, hey, I want to produce this comic book. I want a die cut. I maybe need a little bit of this on this page, and maybe I need this kind of paper that I think is gonna work. They do the pricing, and then they finally, this is like, this is what you want, this is what you get, this is what you have to pay. And then number three,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
and then the third, the third point that I noticed with this type of I don't want to generalize, but most of them is the end quality of the product, right? So then you finally came to an arrangement. You know how the book's gonna look like. You finally bend your knees and say, okay, fine, I'm gonna pay $6, $7, $10,000 that you need in order to print the in order to print my comic book, to bring the cost down to $1 per se, right? So then you finally print it, you finally have it out. And then when the comic book comes back printed and completed, then it looks completely different than what you picture, right? And this is what you sign off, right? So it becomes a circle where the editor or the producer of the comic books or the producer of your product is not giving you exactly what you're looking for. So then, with that being said, what I did is like I sit down here, say like I'm done dealing with any other print shops in a sense. And since I've been working for a print shop for so many years, I'm gonna start just like doing my own stuff. So then believe it or not, there was an immense amount of work put together here to make sure that this place was pretty much located. I didn't put it to myself. I put it to pretty much help and print those works to any other comic book creator who has crazy idea. I want this platinum cover flip to the corner. I don't know, with the pages. One I want it on red, the other one I
Or
want
you
it
do,
on black.
you guys, like I've seen you do chrome covers. You've done all sorts of crazy things. I mean, it's amazing.
All different kinds of stuff. And the other thing, we actually print these things, produce the comic books from 1 copy to 1 million copies. It doesn't matter, right? We're trying to open that little thing. There's places that they already offer this type of services. Don't take me wrong. And I don't say that these services that are wrong, they're bad or not. This is the one thing that we're doing here. You have an opportunity to come into the shop, to look at your work
Yeah.
previously, like before it gets printed. You get the chance to look and assess your book. If you see a typo, if you see anything that is done improperly on your book in the art part, you will have still the opportunity to make an edit and change it before it goes
Yeah,
out
it's all about the
into
proofing, the proofing process of doing the layout and making sure everything's perfect. I mean, when I ran a few magazines back in the day, so I was in the advertising world for many years, and actually people that
Yes.
don't know this about me is that for the last 10 years I've been working in marketing and advertising, so I really understand where you come from in an area of proofing, making sure whether it's because people do this today digitally. So I mean,
Yes.
when you're going out to conventions and putting out a physical book, I mean that's the one thing, guys. I want to mention out there. If you're looking for a company to work with that really cares about your book as a comic book, not just as a guy making a quick buck off you, because if you go to your regular print shops, the one thing I noticed, they just want to make a quick buck. You want to print something? Sure, we'll do it for you. We got our Xerox, we got our this, we got our press. But with StudioComix, the one thing I want to mention this to my audience and to a lot of the people out there, check them out because they actually care. They actually give a damn about your book, about your physical book, about what the end product is. And I think that speaks volume for any business these days. If you want quality and you want people to really work with a good company, that like you've worked with a lot of the people on this show. I know Jeff from Aurora, man. You've printed some stuff for him.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, we've been printing comics. I mean, like since we opened a couple years ago, we've been printing comics here. We've been producing comics for other comic book creators. We're gonna say that we achieve about maybe 300, probably like more than that, different comic
Yeah.
books that we have produced here for not only local comic book creators, Kitchener, Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton, anywhere around the GTA area, but also Montreal. We have doing people like Aurora Man, they're on Edmonton, Alberta,
Yeah.
uh, Saskatchewan. I mean, we have even produced books for some companies at the United States. We
Wow.
have produced books for like the Latin market. So then we are slowly, this is the thing, we're slowly reaching out a market that is needing this type of service. This is the thing, anyone can come around and put a print shop. I mean, if you want, anyone over there, there's more than welcome to do it. If you want to do it, go and do it. Okay, I'm not against any competition, and for the people that they know me, they know that at some point I'm not competing to anyone. I'm there. I know that there's so many other service providers.
No, and
There's any other amazing print shops. However, this is the thing right here, what I'm doing, it's only for all these local comic book community. Whoever wants to approach us and work with us, we'll be super happy to do it. Especially because then I'm not only a comic book creator myself, I've been a printer, I've been producing the comics, I've been selling the comics, I've been very much putting together the comics. Now I'm printing comics for everybody else. So then if there is a person, I mean, not to put many flowers on myself
no, but
because I'm not the type
true.
of
You
person.
have a love. You have a love for the comics. You have a love for the
Right.
industry. I mean, you can very much see
Exactly.
that. You can very much see that in the original movie. And what I want to really see in our upcoming film, whenever that may be, hopefully
Oh, there's another film coming.
yeah, hopefully sooner than later. I mean, but the idea is like I love to see the aftermath because you've already done so much with what you're doing, and you're helping so many independent artists out in Canada, in the U.S., in Mexico. It's unbelievable. I mean,
And with that being said, sorry, Jared, I don't mean to interrupt you. With that being said, there's another important thing that has happened in the last 10 years, and then you have seen it with this growth of new boom of the not only the comic book, but I think that nowadays, on at least a couple of years ago, there was a big boom of the independent Canadian comic book scene and the
oh yeah,
independent comic book. Okay, and I will explain, I will explain my theory behind that. Since the whole production of The Walking Dead,
yeah,
right, when they finally see that an independent comic book, they can actually reach their big screen and make money and really tell the story from beginning to end and have a continuity. Many comic book creators, they have opted to go through that venue to start producing their own comic book and start creating their own stories in their own pace, versus to approach the big large companies to say, hey, this is my new character, do you want to print it? Before, if you look at the story of comic books, we're looking about maybe 10-20 years ago, you used to have your comic book, and the only way to print it or produce it is if one other comic book company or publishing company will carry your book under their brand. We're
no,
looking at the example that
I
happened with
completely agree with
Epic.
you, Alfonso. I completely agree with you, and I have to say that it's the same thing with the film industry. It's the same thing with many other
Yeah,
artistic industries. Music is the same thing. And I'm gonna say something here because even with Heroes Manufacture, what we've done, I feel like
sure.
we were kind of at that point when Canadian comics were becoming even bigger in the name. And
Yeah.
we're starting to explore other things. We're not. I mean, comics is one thing. Entertainment, film, media, movies. Our new
Well,
home.
you gotta think about you gotta think about, sorry about that. You gotta think about that comics are in the entertainment industry.
Oh,
We are pretty
completely,
much part of the entertainment industry, right?
completely in entertainment and a very valued item of the entertainment industry if you look at it. And I feel like a lot of artists, very famous artists too, like, people who are successful for years in the film industry, in the entertainment business, whether they're musicians. I mean, you remember Run DMC came out in the original movie.
Oh yeah,
They were with you in
yeah.
Montreal. I remember you were chatting with Daryl McDaniels. It was amazing. But these are guys who are producing content and they have a love for it. They see the appreciation of the art. They find the appreciation for the writers, and it's amazing to see that these people actually give a damn. And it's nice because we always see celebrities and all these these personalities in one light, right? On the movies, on the big screen, or on TV.
Yeah.
We never see them unless you're at a con and you're meeting these people one-on-one and having a conversation with them. You don't understand how much they actually care about this industry and care about this sometimes more than their own industries. And it's amazing what you're doing. I'm gonna root for you the whole way through, always. I think you're doing a great job, and I'll always give it an amazing recommendation for what you're doing with StudioComix Press. You guys are a great team. You have a full team. I want to show people here. This is the website. It's StudioComixPress.com. There's a booth. If you guys ever check out Alfonso at a convention, he's either there himself or Stephanie from the other image I showed you earlier. You might find the Heroes Manufactured DVDs. He's always selling those there. But you're also, I mean, you're doing additional things like posters, flyers, business cards. You're helping businesses really get out there, and you've carved yourself a really nice niche market, which is amazing to see. And I see you've been holding events where you have like back issues. You've got specific artists coming out like Mel Taylor, Ivan Kochmer. I mean, these guys are great, and the fact that you brought out people and do these events for the community is absolutely amazing. So I mean,
it's just fantastic. I mean, you got comic book creators. I mean, it's incredible the amount of people that I get the chance to talk, especially since the store has been open here. I had the opportunity to have the great opportunity to have people walking through these doors, such as Ivan. We have Mel Taylor. We have another bunch of list of comic book creators and celebrities that they have actually walked to the doors here to.
I know you've had some voice animation actors, some some actors from ongoing TV series, whether they're Canadian or American too. I mean, you've had some pretty big people, and it's funny because you're in Kitchener, you're situated in technically still. I mean, it's definitely grown from when
in the middle of nowhere.
But it's still considered like a small town, right? Like Kitchener's.
Yes, it is. It is Kitchener.
Yeah, it's a small yet big town that everyone loves coming out to. And it's funny. I think the reason why you also bring a lot of Americans, you're not that far from Windsor, Detroit, Michigan. So I mean, it's really cool to see that. So Alfonso, I want to say thank you for coming on today's show. I appreciate you coming out. Thanks for everyone to be a part of the show. We're gonna say bye for now, Alfonso. And see
you guys later.
Yeah, and what I wanted to do, guys.
Everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Alfonso. So for now, I'm gonna just go into our quick comic vault segment. So we're gonna do that right now, and I'm gonna share a book with you guys from this week. A really cool book I picked up not too long ago at a local shop here in Ontario, actually up in Newmarket. It's The Art of Judge Dredd. I love this book. Just as a reference, sometimes I like to show these reference art books. Just incredible from the 2000 AD books originally, but also some of the other books that he's put out there. This is specifically featuring the 35 years of Zarja's covers. So great little book. This was it's got an introduction by John Wagner. Some great visuals there of Judge Dredd and Judge Death. So I mean that's always nice. And these are just some of the visuals here. I always like these references because I love the art that cyberpunk world that 2000 AD has created for years. So if you want to check out a really just cool book, you might be able to find it. It's one of those rare finds, but definitely check it out. Art of Judge Dredd, incredible book here. I'm going to go into our toy and collectible segment for another really cool statue we've got today. I've got Superman, guys. So this is a really cool thing I picked up in Toronto a while back. It's another limited edition book. Toy collectible. This is number 339 of 3,000. So there's only 3,000 of these in the world. Let's open this up and check it out and see what we find in here. I love these busts. I love these statues. These are pretty incredible. This one's pretty big from what I've seen before. And you can find these sometimes used or new, but you'll definitely save a few bucks if you buy them used. Again, they're statues, so you don't necessarily have to buy these things new. Wow, this is the hardest box I've ever had to take out. So I'm going to blame Diamond for this, Diamond Select Toys, because they made a really difficult box for me to take out. I'm not going to give up, guys. I'm going to put this thing out, but let's just see this. Oh, okay, here it is. Coming out now. Okay. All right, guys. This is horrible. Worst thing I've ever had to do on an episode, but we'll take it out right now. So there, it comes with that original certification. This is one of the worst boxes I've ever seen made. I'm literally tearing this thing out, guys. And Alfonso's laughing at me. So we're going to just bring Alfonso into the conversation because this is going to be hilarious. Alfonso, are you having fun here? This is going to bring up my rating for sure.
You're destroying that bag, man.
I am literally, guys, look at this box. I'm destroying it because it's like I've never had to do this. I just don't care. I'm gonna incredibly hope for this thing right now because it's not coming out. I mean, look how bad this thing is. It's just stuck in there. Like, how do you make? And that's why, guys. That's why when you go out there and you need to make something, go to StudioComix because you won't have. Excuse my language.
Hey, you know what? I think that pack it was perfectly done. So then you will have no problems. You know that your little figurine is secure. Yeah. Hey, you didn't tell me that it's gonna be a show and tell section.
Oh, there's definitely
something for you.
I usually tell people, but there, guys, I finally got this piece of crap out. No, I'm just kidding. This is beautiful, guys. But take a look.
It's nice.
It's sorry. Excuse the foam. This is, I mean, I created a mess here, but this is definitely a really cool statue. And again, I always do these show and tell little things at the end of the show. So I know
this is like Batman Adventures, right?
Yes,
I mean Superman Adventures, type of style, right?
The same world, the same style. Because I know that Batman Adventures did a lot of these as well. And I mean, you know, Ty Templeton. We've spoken to him. He loves drawing these types of. So I mean, awesome. if you're looking to do a nice reference, guys, this Superman's definitely great. Awesome. Highly recommended. Definitely. I mean, like I said, it's a limited edition, so this is a 339 of 3,000, but definitely an incredible, nice little statue there. So guys, check that out. Again, Alfonso, that was probably one of the funniest things that happened on our show so far. There you go. But you know what? We're gonna need more of that anyways, because we want to bring our ratings up. So it's awesome. I literally Incredible Hulk that Superman
you have another one?
Box. No. We only do one now an episode. We only do one now.
Can I open a toy myself too?
Sorry?
Can I open a toy?
Oh no, we're gonna stay out here for too long. But in any case,
ladies and gentlemen, welcome to welcome to the new episode here. Thank you, Aaron, for the introduction. Now, welcome to the new episode of Alfonso Toys and Collectibles. We're gonna be
there. You go.
6 hours.
Yeah, I know, it was awesome. Listen,
thank you very much.
And I want to share this with everyone as well. We're gonna have another episode with Alfonso coming up later this week. And essentially, what it is, it's going to be an episode where all the everyone from the original cast, well, not everyone. We couldn't get a couple of people, but at least the ones that we could get are going to be on there with some of the producers for a conversation, all 6 of us together, discussing kind of a reunion of the film, of what we've done with it so far, and where we're headed with the Heroes Manufactured live show and with the new series that's coming out. Alfonso, you're actually making an appearance in that as well. You're in the first episode. So if anyone wants to see a little bit about Alfonso there, he's going to be in the first episode of the new series, Heroes Manufactured Creators Unleashed. Thanks again, Alfonso. I appreciate your time today, guys. Take care, everyone. Appreciate it. Yeah. And take care, guys. Have a good one. Peace.